Hello everyone, my name is Manolis. I'm a research fellow at the University of Leeds and I'm working on this project called Console. And I would like to briefly show you um, what is it about and some preliminary work we've done on it. So it's part of I'm part of a bigger team in Leeds, also part of a large consortium of 24 different partner institutions from 13 different European countries, and they have been coming together in order to look at past and current case studies of farmers and land managers that have come together, and they have enrolled and participated in some sort of scheme, agri-environment scheme, but that are looking to enhance the climate, to improve biodiversity, and so on. And the reason why, of course, is that there is a new common agricultural policy coming in the EU in 2021. So there's a review of what the work has for the past few years has actually achieved. And of course, here in the UK, we have the post-Brexit agriculture sort of kicking up and being sort of drafted. There's lots of talk about the new schemes, the elms, and so on. So this work is so what is Console doing? Very briefly, Console has produced fact-sheet summaries you can find in their website of short summaries of what each of these groups of farmers has done in different countries. In total, there are 60 different fact sheets from 60 different groups, and what were the outcomes or the expected outcomes of their activities. And of course, is also sort of taking into account more information in terms of in-depth interviews, in-depth examination of why these groups of farmers did what they did, what were the drivers, environmental, social, and so on, and what are the lessons learned from what they've been doing. And then hopefully the idea is to bring all of this information together from the fact sheets, from the interviews, and from the stakeholder engagement with scientists and so on, and present farmers and land managers across these 13 different countries with some novel agri-environment schemes, some novel contract solutions, as they call them, and see, will this work for you? This has been working in this country, but will that work for you and for your specific needs? And finally, Console wants to create what they call a community practice. So basically, it's just to facilitate the getting together of scientists, of farmers, of foresters, of land managers, policymakers, and so on, and try to sort of co-design, to test, and to discuss about these new solutions that are being sort of drafted and thought of. And of course, offer people the ability to find scientific advice or to find expert knowledge and so on. So here in the UK, what we've been working with as the University of Leeds is with a group with different groups of farmers across the Yorkshire area, which is the wider area that iCASP is involved in. So we've been working with Countryside Stewardship Facilitation Funds, the CSSF groups, and in total, these groups, they have around 330 people. So hopefully, this is the impact that we will be able to have. This is the people that we can actually actively inform. So what are the things that are important? Now, what are the questions that we're asking? Is that, okay, there is this policy change that is coming in the EU and the UK, but how are the current agri-environment schemes and the future ones that are being drafted, how well do they fit the needs of farmers and land managers? So the policymakers, they want to enhance the environment, protect biodiversity, and so on. But what do the farmers need? And then there's also, again, the policy shift towards biodiversity, climate protection, and so on. But what are the farmers' preferences on how these contracts should look like? So there's their needs, what they need to do, but also what do they prefer to do? What are they more comfortable? What are they more willing to do? And then finally, all of these contracts, there's so many different agri-environment schemes in Europe. They differ in terms of length of the contract, whether they require monitoring or not, whether they offer scientific support or advice from farm advisors, or whether you have to collaborate with other farmers and so on. And they're so different. What are the characteristics of these agri-environment schemes that are making farmers more likely to take part in them? So how will the ideal, let's say, contract look like? So what we've done basically is that we looked in the literature and we did what is called a meta-analysis. So we put all of these studies together that were similar, that were measuring the similar things. So they were asking farmers, they were doing surveys with farmers, asking them, here's some contracts, here's some options for you. Which one are you willing to choose? So we did a literature search, and we found basically 37 studies from the past 15 years. And the 15 years is just because agri-environment schemes, the way that we know them now, have been running for the past 15 years. Most of these studies, they were looking into things such as ecologically focused areas or some sort of set-aside land. So basically, it's taking land out of production and leaving it as it is. Most of these studies were in Europe. Most of the studies were studies with farmers, not with foresters. And there was a bit of variety in terms of climate. Most of them actually were coming from countries with continental climate, so cold winters and also warm summers as well. And then we also added some information about the studies from publicly available databases on farmer income and the average farmland size, to see if those things are also playing a role in the acceptance of such schemes. These were the countries, the studies that we collected, this where they were actually undertaken. So basically it's the north and west of Europe. And here's the results. I mean, basically things are not good. So the contracts that the farmers in all these studies were actually offered, they didn't really like it. So the mean estimate is actually negative. The negative doesn't mean much, but basically it means that farmers are not willing to accept such schemes. If we restrict our sample of studies to European studies, because not all of them were European, but the majority were, I mean, farmers are even less willing, European farmers, to take part in such schemes. Well, if we look at studies though that what we call the best set studies, like the ones that were better designed, the farmers showed sort of more interest in participating and everything, the estimate is positive in this case, and it's almost 43 euros per hectare per year. So, I mean, it's not a high estimate, right? So if you compare this estimate to the maximum amount of payments that under EU law you can get for such agri-environment schemes, the 42 euros is it's 100% lower, or sometimes 180% lower from what you get. Usually what you get there is like 200, maximum payment is 200 euros per hectare per year, or up to 900 euros per hectare per year. So 42 euros per hectare, quite a low estimate. Actually, as an estimate, this is closer to what you would get in schemes such as the entry-level stewardship scheme here in the UK. So basically simpler schemes that they give farmers, there are few requirements for farmers, but also the benefits are not as big for the environment. And the other sort of interesting bit of results that we got is that basically from these models, farmers, we could actually see that farmers were willing to participate. But all the variables that we included in the models to explain that interest, they were actually negative. So basically, farmers, they want to participate in biodiversity and climate and enhancing agri-environment schemes. But the way that the schemes are right now across Europe, it's not working for the farmers. They have no interest in taking part in such schemes. So what does that mean then? So, and sort of basically this is a little bit more information from the work we've done. So offering the farmers support from scientists or farm advisors, or also offering sort of lengthier contracts, were not attractive to them. So one of the reasons could be that farmers do not want to take a lot of land out of production for extended periods of time. And also the interaction between farmers and farm advisors might have, but not be considered as a positive for the farmers, because in the past, the complexity of the schemes and the demands of the overseeing authorities sort of made the work of the advisors much more difficult. So the farmers actually, they saw no benefit to that. And that's not the problem of either the farmers or the advisors. It's just the way the schemes were sort of designed. So basically, our results find this, that the farmers, they won't take part in such schemes. But all the variables that we included, just like the ones that I talked before, they were actually making the farmers less likely to choose that scheme. So the main finding is that the farmers do want to take part, but the current design is not working for them. So they might only take part in agri-environment schemes that are quite simple. But these schemes, actually, they do not provide the change, they do not bring the change that policymakers are actually envisioning. So what are the future steps based on these findings? So clearly we need to design better agri-environment schemes in order to provide the benefits that we're looking for. So we are planning a farmer survey to be rolled out between October and December. They're actually going to incorporate some of the findings that we've had. Like, this is not working, but we are going to be looking at especially on how the new albums are actually being designed and what they're offering to the farmers, and seeing how the farmers are actually responding to that in order to properly inform UK policy, and then also to get this community of practice going and to allow farmers to express their views, to find answers to their questions, support from their peers and from scientists, facilitate all this peer-to-peer learning, also within the UK, but also with European counterparts. That is all. Thank you for your attention.